Okay. My name's Jordan Morrison, and this is episode 56 of It Is What It Is. I am live, by the way, so bear with me. This is the first time I've done one of my podcast episodes live. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been testing out live throughout the week, and I will say it again. I've been going live throughout the week, playing some guitar, talking some shit, doing whatever. But that is not what this episode is about. From the title, from the thumbnail, you know that this episode is about the real Anthony Fauci. This is going to be really good, really juicy, and I'll get into that in a moment. I've got a lot of people reaching out to me. I've got a lot of people asking me, hey, Jordan, what's going on? Tell us about your car accident. Your car got totaled. What's going on? Tell us about the reason you got fired, your wrongful termination. People are reaching out and saying, hey, talk to us about the drunk driver who drove through your property. Now, I'd love to speak to those things. I would love to speak about my car. My lawyer's handling that for my car. I'd love to speak about my wrongful termination. My lawyers for that predicament won't let me speak about it. And the drunk driver who drove through my property isn't settled either. So my attorney is working on that as well. Got all kinds of attorneys these days. It's pretty fun stuff to say the least. But that's not what this episode is about. Again, it's not why we're here. I'm not going to dive into those things. In due time, I will get into that. In due time, I will make time to dive into those situations and really let you know what's going on. I've got a whole list of episodes that I'm providing to you guys. It's gonna be a pretty interesting summer. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be wet. It's gonna be wild, and I'm bringing it for you guys. I've been away for a while for good reason. I've been making some new music. I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, Jordan, share Diamonds Hang on Collarbones with us. Talk to us about it. Tell us what that is about. Tell us about Cowboy Blood, which is my newest track. I've had people tell me, hey, Jordan, tell us about the track you're working on now. And again, all in due time. That'll all be on the way. Very excited to share all of that with you. Details to come, updates to come for sure. And that's what I've got currently for y'all. So episode 56, the real Anthony Fauci. Now, I can't stress this enough. You really should go buy this book. The book's incredible. I want to take some time tonight and I want to tell you why I'm highlighting the real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. Again, go buy the book. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because it's so important to what we are living through currently. What we're living through currently is pretty wild. We're looking at war with Iran. We're looking at 0 arrests made by the current Trump administration, which I'm not happy about. We're looking at a slow play so that all of the idiots that have no idea what's really going on in the world, everybody that was wrong about COVID, and I told everybody when it was happening what was really going on. I was getting into arguments on social media with people. I was telling them that we were being lied to, that the numbers were being inflated, that this was no more of an issue than the common cold or the flu. I was telling people that they were being gaslit by their governors, that we were being locked in our homes unconstitutionally, and people will still argue that fact. But the reason I'm here tonight is to shed some light on that situation. For example, hypothetically, maybe you had a friend who just quite didn't do their research and dive into COVID themselves. Or maybe you had a sister who doesn't know how to read and doesn't know how to form an opinion on her own. Or maybe you had a brother who didn't want to listen to you. Or maybe you had a mother who just didn't want to hear it. Or maybe, just maybe, you had a father that's an absolute retard. Again, all hypotheticals there. But in that hypothetical situation, if you do have a retarded father who is nothing but a loser, then I am here tonight to help you. What you can do is you can take this podcast, you can tell them to skip to this minute mark, whatever it is, and we're going to dive into my highlighted portions of the Real Anthony Fauci. Now, I'm not going to read all of the highlighted portions of this book. Don't worry. I'm going to read the most juicy details, the details that have cited sources. I'm going to be reading the details that you need to know, and you can share this with your friends. I would recommend it. I recommend that you say, hey, I know that you can't read. I know that you won't read. So why don't you listen to these highlights of cited sources of things that are very important to know. Again, this is The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. Tons of cited sources. You should go read it yourself, buy it for your friends, buy it for your family. And I'm going to jump into it. So again, RFK's book, and here we go. The first thing I want to share with you. The CDC, for example, owns 57 vaccine patents. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to read it like that. But the CDC, for example, owns 57 vaccine patents and spends 4.9 of its $12 billion annual budget as of 2019 buying and distributing vaccines. Dr. Fauci receives yearly emoluments of up to $150,000 in royalty payments on products that they have helped develop and then usher through the approval process. The FDA receives 45% of its budget from the pharmaceutical industry through what are euphemistically called user fees. Again, I'm going to be powering through this as quick as I can to give you all of the highlights. Here's another one. Since COVID mortalities were mainly among the elderly, the average age of death for COVID in the UK was 82.4 years of age, which is above the average lifespan. Make that make sense. You're telling me that we were locked in our homes for something that was killing people that was above the average lifespan? According to the Associated Press, during 2020, 10,000 children died each month due to virus-linked hunger from global lockdowns. In addition, 500,000 children per month experienced wasting and stunting from malnutrition, up 6.7 million from last year's total of 47 million. This book was published in November of 2021. According to an Ohio State University study, suicide rates among children rose 50%. An August 11th, 2021 study by Brown University found that infants born during the quarantine were short, on average, 22 IQ points, as measured by the Baylor scale tests. Some 93,000 Americans died of overdose in 2020, a 30% rise over 2019. Overdoses from synthetic opioids increased by 38.4%, and 11% of U.S. adults considered suicide in June of 2020. 3 million children disappeared from public school systems, and ERs saw a 31% increase in adolescent mental health virus. That is due to the lockdowns, the unconstitutional lockdowns that we experienced, that I fought against, that people were so just sheep herded into and would do again. So that's why we're here tonight, to expose this. In 2020, workers lost 3.7 trillion, while billionaires gained 3.9 trillion. Some 493 individuals became new billionaires, and an additional 8 million Americans dropped below the poverty line. You think that's fair? You think that's fair that those billionaires get to gain $3.9 trillion worth of wealth? We got 493 new billionaires, that's with a B, and 8 million Americans drop below the poverty line. All right, let's see. Ellison's wealth increased by 34 billion in 2020. Mark Zuckerberg, we all know the Zuck, he sucks. Wealth grew by 35 billion. Google's Sergey Brin by 41 billion, Jeff Bezos by 86 billion, Bill Gates by 22 billion, and Michael Bloomberg by nearly 7 billion. We've got 69 recommended vaccine doses by the age of 18. None of them are properly safety tested. Are you going to argue with me about that? Go ahead. Send it in. If you're one of those, I don't know, deniers, if you're one of those, hey, let's get a vax, I hope that you're sticking up on top of that. How many vaxes are recommended, if not 69, if you're one of the vaccine experts, if you're one of the ones getting the shot all the time? Go ahead, tell me. Do you get your booster all the time? How many boosters have you had? I don't know. Under Dr. Fauci's leadership, the allergic, autoimmune, and chronic illness, which Congress specifically charged NIAID to investigate and prevent, have mushroomed to afflict 54% up to 12.8% when he took over. That's a lot. There is some large highlights that I wish I could read here. So vaccines are a potential culprit, but not the only one. Other possible perpetrators or accomplices that fit the applicable criteria: a sudden epidemic across all demographics beginning in 1989 are corn syrup, PFOA, flame retardants, processed foods, cell phones, and EMF radiation, ultrasound, and neonicotinoid pesticides. So that's important, because why the anti-Semitism tweet, RFK Jr.? We'll get into that here in a moment. Don't you worry. The corporate seizure of America's public health agencies by pharmaceutical industry. That's what agency capture means. Agency capture, again, means the corporate seizure of America's public health agencies by pharmaceutical industry. There's actually a phrase for when private pharmaceutical companies take over our government and those agencies. There's actually a phrase for that, because that exists. And we have experienced it in this country. Dr. Fauci is quoted saying on February 17th, let's see what year that was, in 2020, in an email, he said, "Now, in the United States, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to wear a mask." During a January 28th speech to HHS regulators, he explained masking asymptomatic people. He said asymptomatic transmission has never been a driver of outbreaks. The driver of outbreaks is always a symptomatic person. Even if there's a rare asymptomatic person that might transmit, an epidemic is not driven by asymptomatic carriers. Remember when we all had to wear masks in airports and stand 6 feet apart because you didn't know if you were asymptomatic, or right? And I was called a grandma killer in Costco. I was called a grandma killer in Trader Joe's. And that was because I wasn't wearing a mask. Sounds like I didn't need to be wearing a mask per Dr. Fauci. Again, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to wear a mask. Further, some 52 studies, all available on NIH's website, find that an ordinary mask using less than an N95 respirator doesn't reduce viral infection rates, even surprisingly, in institutional settings like hospitals and surgical theaters. Well, I had to wear a mask everywhere I went. I refused to, but I was told to. Dr. Fauci acquiesced to CDC's selective protocol change for completing death certificates in a way that inflated the claimed deaths of COVID and thus inflated the infection mortality rate. CDC later admitted that only 6% of COVID deaths occurred entirely in healthy individuals. The remaining 94% suffered from an average of 3.8 potential fatal comorbidities. I'm going to read that again in case that just went over your head, flew by you. Dr. Fauci acquiesced to CDC's selective protocol changes for completing death certificates in a way that inflated the claimed deaths from COVID. So remember the COVID counter that CNN had on the screen all the time? Well, that claimed death from COVID was inflated. CDC later admitted that only 6% of COVID deaths occurred in entirely healthy individuals. The remaining 94 suffered from an average of 3.8 potentially fatal comorbidities. You know what one of those comorbidities was? Obesity. Because we're so fat, I had to stay locked down with a mask everywhere I went because that's one of the 3.8 potential fatal comorbidities leading to things like heart disease, so on and so forth. CDC's decision to skip autopsies from deaths following vaccination were unrelated to vaccination. Medicare paid hospitals, $39,000 per ventilator when treating COVID-19 and only $13,000 for garden variety respiratory infections. Hospitals contributed to the deception. Yes, that's right. Hospitals were paid $39,000 per ventilator. We'll get into this in a moment, but when they were prescribing remdesivir and a ventilator, they were getting paid out heavily. We're about to find out that there was far better solutions to treat COVID that didn't cost $39,000. Public surveys showed that just as Fox News audiences were shockingly misinformed following the 9/11 bombings, that's an interesting way to put it. 9/11 bombings, CNN viewers and New York Times readers were catastrophically misinformed about the facts of COVID-19 during 2020. Successive Gallup polling showed that the average Democrat believed that 50% of COVID infections resulted in hospitalization. The real number was less than 1%. So when all of you wanted to trust the science, you were being gaslit like a motherfucker. So bad. It wasn't even so bad. You guys believed that 50% leaded to hospitalization. It was less than 1%. You were saying the hospitals were overrun with COVID. That was a lie. We lived through a lie. We were absolutely lied to. And again, I want to circle back. RFK chose to say that public surveys showed that just as Fox News audiences were shockingly misinformed by following the 9/11 bombings. 9/11 bombings? I thought those were planes. Yeah, well, we're about to find out some interesting things about 9/11, folks. Buckle up. Dr. Fauci's lockdowns caused Americans to gain an average of 2 pounds per month and reduce their daily steps by 27%. Do you think we need a fatter country? I think we're the fattest country on earth. And because of Dr. Fauci's lockdowns, we gained an average of 2 pounds a month. I wish I could get those 2 pounds a month back, get that body back. I tell you what. Here we go. By July 1st, McCullough and his team had developed the first protocol based on signals of benefit and acceptable safety. They submitted the protocol to the American Journal of Medicine. That study, titled The Pathopsychologic Basis and Clinical Rationale for Early Ambulatory Treatment for COVID-19, quickly became the world's most downloaded paper to help doctors treat COVID-19. It's extraordinary, this is a quote, it's extraordinary that Dr. Fauci never published a single treatment protocol before that, Dr. McCullough says, and that America's doctors have never, to date, published anything on how to treat COVID-19 patients. What a shame. This was Dr. David Brownstein said, we treated 715 patients and had 10 hospitalizations and no deaths. Early treatment was key. Early treatment with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine was key. We will come to find that out. No one wanted Americans to know that you didn't have to die from COVID. It's 100% treatable, says Dr. Brownstein. We proved it. Nobody had to die. Meanwhile, adds Dr. Brownstein, we've seen lots of really bad vaccine side effects in our patients. We've had 7 strokes, some ending in severe paralysis. We had 3 cases of pulmonary embolism, 2 blood clots, and 2 cases of Graves' disease and 1 death. Now, we're going to get into the remdesivir fiasco, how bad that was for patients, how hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin could help, but let's keep going. Where do we go? In September, Dr. McCullough used his own money to create a YouTube video showing 4 slides from his peer-reviewed American Medical Association articles to teach doctors the miraculous benefits of early treatment with hydroxychloroquine and other remedies. His video went viral with hundreds of thousands of downloads. YouTube pulled it 2 days later. Now, why would they go do that? Why would they go do that when doctors are showing and proving the benefits of early treatment with hydroxychloroquine? Is it because there was no patent available for hydroxychloroquine? Because hydroxychloroquine had been used for over 50 years to successfully treat multiple diseases? I wonder. Dr. Fauci's suppression of early treatment and off-patient remedies was responsible for up to 80% of deaths attributed to COVID. They proved that. They proved that because hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin was not available and was suppressed by Dr. Fauci and gang, early treatments and off-patient remedies was responsible for up to 80% of deaths attributed to COVID patients. Wow. Look at that. Here we go. The sketchiest of all medical experts who isn't a doctor, Bill Gates. Here we go. Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates, $48 billion COVID vaccine project, and particularly to their vanity drug remdesivir, in which Gates has a large stake. Under federal law, new vaccines and medicines cannot qualify for emergency use authorization if any existing FDA drug proves effective against the same malady. Well, they wanted to suppress ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. We will get into it. Dr. Fauci has invested $6 billion in taxpayer money in the Moderna vaccine alone. And his agency is co-owner of the patent and stands to collect a fortune in royalties. Now, we know that President Trump just released on the whitehouse.gov website, go look it up yourself. He released factual information about Dr. Fauci, his wrongdoings in handling the COVID-19 vaccine. Our money was used to be invested in the vaccine that Dr. Fauci's agency is a co-owner of the patent and stands to collect a fortune in royalties. How does that not land him in jail today, tonight, right now? How? Somebody explain it to me. I don't get it. And it just upsets me. Dr. Fauci's challenge to prove that hydroxychloroquine is dangerous was daunting because hydroxychloroquine is a 65-year-old formula that regulates around the globe, long ago approved as both safe and effective against a variety of illnesses. So we knew that could help. Hydroxychloroquine cocktail exert antiviral effects. McCullough shows that the efficacy of the hydroxychloroquine cocktail is based on the pharmacology of the hydroxychloroquine ionophore acting as the gun and zinc as the bullet. So we could have just been taking our vitamins and a drug that was 65 years tested and proven safe. On January 13, when rumors of Wuhan flu COVID-19 began to circulate, the French government took the bizarre, inexplicable, unprecedented, and highly suspicious step of reassigning hydroxychloroquine from over-the-counter to a prescription medicine. Without citing any studies, French health officials quietly changed the status of hydroxychloroquine to list 2 poisonous substance and banned its over-the-counter sales. This absolutely remarkable coincidence repeated itself few weeks later, and Canadian health officials did this exact same thing, quietly removing the drug from pharmacy shelves. Why were they removing something that could help? Somebody tell me, make it make sense. Somebody who is pro-vaccine, COVID vaccine, hit me up, make it make sense. Drop it in the comments in live. We're live right now. So somebody clap back at your boy if he's wrong here. South Africa destroyed 2 tons of life-saving hydroxychloroquine in late 2020, supposedly due to violation of an import regulation. The U.S. government in 2021 ordered the destruction of more than 1,000 pounds of hydroxychloroquine because it was improperly imported. On March 13th, a Michigan doctor and trader, Dr. James Todaro, tweeted his review of hydroxychloroquine and an effective COVID treatment, including a link to a public Google Doc. Google quietly scrubbed Dr. Todaro's memo. This was 6 weeks before the president endorsed hydroxychloroquine. Google apparently didn't want the users to think Torado's message was missing. Rather, the big tech platform wanted the public to believe that Torado's memo never even existed. Google has a long history of suppressing information that challenges vaccine industry profits. Google's parent company, Alphabet, owns several vaccine companies, including Verily, as well as Vacatech, a company banking on flu, prostate cancer, and COVID vaccines. Here's another good one. Dr. Fauci launched his converted attack on hydroxychloroquine, asked whether hydroxychloroquine might be used as a prophylaxis for COVID. He shouted back, "The answer is no. And the evidence that you're talking about is anecdotal evidence." So he clearly did not like hydroxychloroquine. Here's another quote. After widespread use of the drug for 65 years without warning, FDA somehow felt the need to send out an alert on June 15th, 2020, that hydroxychloroquine is dangerous and that it required a level of monitoring only available at hospitals. It was available over the counter in many countries for years and years and years. What would be another one? Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates and the WHO financed a cadre of research mercenaries to concoct a series of nearly 20 studies. The WHO administered a borderline lethal daily dose starting at 2,400 milligrams day 1 and using 800 milligrams thereafter. They were trying to show that hydroxychloroquine wasn't safe. Dr. Merle Nass says the purpose seemed very clearly to poison the patients and blame the deaths on hydroxychloroquine. Brazilian prosecutors have accused the authors of the study of committing homicide by purposefully poisoning the elderly subjects in their study with high doses of chloroquine. That's a pretty big allegation right there. What else do we have? So essentially, hydroxychloroquine was made to be a bad guy, and it was not. I'm looking for the pertinent highlights here to read for you. On June 17th, the WHO, for which Mr. Gates is the largest funder after the US, and over which Mr. Gates and Dr. Fauci exercised tight control, called for the halt of hydroxychloroquine trials in hundreds of hospitals across the world. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom, I'm not even going to try to say that last name, ordered nations to stop using hydroxychloroquine. Portugal, France, Italy, and Belgium banned hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19 treatments. That's unfortunate. Dr. Fauci did not sponsor or encourage randomized trials for masks, lockdowns, or social distancing. And in the decades since he took over NIAID, he has never demanded randomized studies to confirm safety for the combined 69 vaccine doses currently on the childhood schedule. The good question to ask here is, will RFK Jr. implement this in his current role as health secretary? Will he demand randomized studies to confirm safety of the combined 69 vaccine doses currently on the childhood schedule? RFK Jr., we are waiting. An April 3rd, 2020 article entitled Lab Experiments Show Anti-Parasitic Drug Ivermectin Estimates SARS-CoV-2 in Cells in 48 Hours by Australian researcher. He won global attention as a potential treatment for COVID. Let's see. In a study, they found that COVID deaths dropped precipitously by 14-fold in the regions where the Peruvian government effectively distributed ivermectin. Reductions in death correlated with the extent of ivermectin distributions in all 25 states. In December 2020, Peru's new president, under pressure from WHO, severely restricted ivermectin availability and COVID cases rebound, deaths increased 13-fold. So ivermectin reduced it 14-fold. They said, hey, let's reduce how much ivermectin we're putting out there. It increased 13-fold. Cited study. Let's see. Dr. Hector Carvalho conducted a randomized placebo-controlled trial of ivermectin as a preventative, finding 100% efficiency against COVID. Carvalho's team found no infections among the 788 workers who took weekly ivermectin prophylaxis, whereas 58% of the 407 controls became ill with COVID-19. Let me tell you again, 100% efficacy against COVID-19. Carvalho's team found no infections among the 788 workers who took weekly ivermectin prophylaxis, whereas 58% of the 407 controls have become ill with COVID-19. I'm telling you, send this podcast to any family member, any friend, any COVID nut who still wears a mask and gets their booster, and make them listen to these highlights in The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. Go buy the book. Go buy the book. This is a quote here by a Dr. Corey of the National Institute of Health COVID-19 Treatment Guidelines panel. He went on to say, COVID resulted in about 6 million hospitalizations and 700,000 deaths in America, says Dr. Corey. If hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin had been widely used instead of systematically suppressed, we could have prevented 75% or at least 500,000 deaths and 80% of hospitalizations, or 4.8 million. We could have spared states hundreds of billions of dollars. I want my money back. That's what I want. I want my money back. What else do we got here for y'all? Little back and forth between some doctors. It's good highlighted stuff. You should read it for yourself. The WHO, echoing its strategy for taking hydroxychloroquine, said ivermectin should only be limited to clinical trials. The high cost of running a clinical trial and the reliance on NIH, NIAID, Gates, or pharma funding means that their results may be easily controlled. FDA issued a much firmer directive. You should not use ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19. Why did the FDA say that? Why did the FDA say that you should not use ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19 when clearly we just found out that 100% efficiency against preventing COVID in those 788 coworkers or workers or whatever it was? On August 16th, 2021, 2 weeks after the Wall Street Journal article, CDC ordered doctors to stop prescribing ivermectin. On August 17th, 2021, the NIAID recommended against ivermectin's use to combat the novel coronavirus. On August 26th, 2021, CDC sent out an emergency warning using its health alert network. Shameful. Shameful. And everyone who participated in this should be disgraced. They should be barred from medicine. They should be in jail. That is my stern opinion. In Florida and South Carolina, Blue Cross Blue Shield sent mass mailings to physicians notifying them that Blue Cross Blue Shield would no longer pay insurance claims for ivermectin and threatened audits of any physician who wrote prescriptions for the drug. Furthermore, only 10 days before Merck discovered its concerns about ivermectin, Merck signed a manufacturing partnership for the Novavax and Emergent Biosolutions COVID vaccine as it moved into final trials. Ironically, molnupiravir, a copycat formula, utilized an identical mechanism of action as ivermectin. That drug will retail at around $700 per course, but only if Met can kill its cheap rival, is what RFK Jr. says. Let's see what else we got here. The Independent asked, ivermectin, why are U.S. anti-vaxxers touting a horse dewormer as a cure for COVID? Business Insider warned people that people were poisoning themselves trying to treat or prevent COVID-19 with a horse deworming drug. Associated Press assures readers no evidence ivermectin is a miracle drug against COVID-19. Didn't Doge find that we were funding the Associated Press? I think they did. Twitter post back in 2021, the FDA expanded the theme. You are not a horse. You are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it. They were just mocking us to our face, acting like we thought we were taking horse dewormer when really we were just trying to take ivermectin to prevent COVID. Over 30 years, ivermectin has been associated with only 379 reported deaths, an impressive death-to-dose reporting ratio of 1 in every 10.584 million. In contrast, over the 18 months since remdesivir received emergency use authorization, about 1.5 million patients have received remdesivir, with 1,499 deaths reported, a dire 1 in 1,000 death ratio. Meanwhile, among recipients of COVID jabs in the United States during the 10 months following their rollout, some 17,000 deaths have occurred following vaccination, a reported death ratio of 1 in every 13,250. Ivermectin is therefore 1,000 times safer than remdesivir and COVID vaccines. The science also indicates that it is far more effective than either. NPR, which takes $3 million from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, jumped on the dog pile and deceptively insinuated that Rogan took horse level doses. Disgusting. Remdesivir, by the way, was the patented drug that they wanted to provide people that really, what we'll find out, was actually just killing people. Remdesivir has no clinical efficacy against COVID, according to every legitimate study. Worse, it's deadly, poisonous, and expensive poison at $3,000 a treatment. Why would Dr. Fauci care to undermine any medicine that might compete with remdesivir? Might it have something to do with NIAID and CDC having just spent $79 million developing remdesivir for Gilead, a company in which Bill and Melinda Gates own a $6.5 million stake? However, 6 months into the Ebola study, the Trial Safety Review Board suddenly pulled both remdesivir and ZMapp from the trial. Remdesivir, it turned out, was hideously dangerous. Within 28 days, subject taking remdesivir had lethal side effects, including multiple organ failure, acute kidney failure, septic shock, and hypertension, and 54% of remdesivir group died, the highest mortality rate among the 4 experimental drugs. Remdesivir is no good, my friends. For hydroxychloroquine, Dr. Fauci demanded well-designed, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. He warned against the use of ivermectin for treatment. Based on Dr. Fauci's representation, President Trump purchased the world's entire stock of remdesivir for Americans. You're telling me that President Trump purchased the world's entire stock of remdesivir for Americans using our taxpayer dollars, I'm presuming. FDA's recognition of remdesivir as the new standard of care for COVID meant that Medicaid and insurance companies could not legally deny it to patients and would have to fork over Gilead's exorbitant price tag on products U.S. taxpayers had by then spent at least $85 million to develop. It's sick, people. Vaccines are one of the rare commercial products that multiply profits by failing. Each new booster doubles the revenues from the initial jab. Since NIAID co-owned the mRNA patent, the agency stood to make billions from the coronavirus gambit by producing successive boosters for every new variant. The more, the better. In October 2021, Pfizer announced that it was projecting an astonishing $26 billion in revenue from its COVID boosters. Here we go. Let's get into it. Vaccinated children who were less than 9 years of age who had never been exposed to dengue before were more likely to die if they had been vaccinated than if they hadn't been vaccinated. That is a concern of the dengue vaccine there for you. Dr. Fauci said during his March 26, 2020 White House coronavirus briefing, he acknowledged the perils of pathogenic priming. He said that the worst possible thing you could do is vaccinate somebody to prevent infection and actually make them worse. Email traffic shows that Dr. Fauci colluded directly with Mark Zuckerberg and the social media platforms to censor doctors who reported vaccine failures, harms, and deaths, to deplatform public health advocates like myself, and to evict and muzzle patients who reported their own injuries, says RFK Jr. In January of 2021, baseball superstar Hank Aaron, whom I know, died 17 days after receiving the COVID jab, says RFK Jr. When he called to verify their claim, the Fulton County coroner told me that the officer had never seen Aaron's body and that no autopsy was ever performed. Aaron's family had buried the home run hero without a post-mortem, says RFK Jr. The final summary, let's skip back. A September 2021 Israeli study demonstrating the natural immunity provides 27 times better protection against COVID than the Pfizer vaccine is just one of 29 recently published peer-reviewed studies that vouch for the superiority of natural immunity. The final summary of the Pfizer's 6-month clinical trial data, the document that Pfizer submitted to FDA to win approval, reveal one key data point that should have killed the invention forever. Far more people died in the vaccine group than in the placebo group during Pfizer's clinical trials. So how did Pfizer transform its unimpressive record of eliminating a single COVID fatality among 22,000 vaccinated subjects into a $5 billion a year success story? By going the public with a deceiving measure called relative risk instead of the presumptive and far more useful measure of absolute risk. The table shows that during the 6-month trial, 2 people in the placebo group, numbering approximately 22,000, and only 1 in the similarly sized vaccine group died from COVID. So 2 in the placebo, 1 in the vaccine. Believe it or not, this data point is the source of Pfizer's claim that the vaccine is 100% efficacious against death. A more honest and helpful way of thinking about Pfizer's vaccine efficacy is to consider that 22,000 vaccines must be given to save a single life from COVID. Wow. Pfizer's 6-month clinical data for COVID vaccine trials suggested that while the vaccine would avert a single death from COVID-19, the vaccinated group suffered 4 times the number of lethal heart attacks as the unvaccinated. Let me say that again. Pfizer's 6-month clinical data for its COVID vaccine trials suggested that while the vaccine vaccine would avert a single death from COVID-19, the vaccinated group suffered 4 times the number of lethal heart attacks as the unvaccinated. In other words, there was no mortality benefit from the vaccines. For every life from COVID, there were 4 excess heart attack fatalities. Are any of you out there suffering from something like heart attack fatalities? I wonder why. That means there were only 42.8% more deaths in the vaccine than in the placebo groups. Let's see here. Belgian health officials acknowledge that the current vaccine cannot stop COVID nor protect Belgian citizens. Let's see. Britain. Over the age of 40 reported infections are highest in the double vaccinated. This means that fully vaccinated individuals from this age group experienced a 53% higher reported infection rate than unvaccinated individuals that month. What else do we have? We've got 68 nations and 3,000 U.S. counties saying an October 3rd, 2021 study by scientists at Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health compared vaccination rates for 68 nations and 2,947 counties across America as one of September 21st and compared them to COVID-19 cases per 1 million people. Their report concludes that nations and counties with higher vaccination rates do not experience lower per capita SARS-CoV-2 cases. Go riddle me that. In 1976, U.S. regulators pulled the swine flu vaccine after it was linked to 25 deaths. In contrast, between December 14th, 2020 and October 1st, 2021, American doctors, bereaved families have reported more than 16,000 deaths and a total of 778,605 injuries to the vaccine adverse event reporting system. Here is, you can't see it very well. I apologize. You can see it here. This low line is low, and no mistake here. It looks like the side of the frame. That is the adverse reportings to VAERS. It's a flat line essentially up until we hit, what year was that? Oh my gosh, it was 2021. Says VAERS data shows a huge spike. I'm sorry, let me rewind. Health workers have administered many billions of vaccines during the past 32 years. Yet in just 8 months, the COVID vaccines have injured and killed far more Americans than all other vaccines combined over 3 decades. VAERS data shows the huge spike, 69.84% of deaths occurring during the 2 weeks after vaccination, 39.48% within 24 hours of the injection. According to CDC's fatality data, a COVID vaccine is 98 times more likely to kill than the flu vaccine. I'm going to read that again in case you don't believe it. Health workers have administered many billions of vaccines during the past 32 years. Yet in just 8 months, the COVID vaccine has injured and killed far more Americans than all other vaccines combined over 3 decades. VAERS data shows the huge spikes, 69.84% of deaths occurring during the 2 weeks after vaccination and 39.48% within 24 hours of the injections. According to CDC's fatality data, the COVID vaccine is 98 times more likely to kill than a flu vaccine. A recent peer-reviewed study in the highest gravitas Elsevier journal, Toxicology Reports, found that COVID-19 vaccines kill more people in each age group than they save. According to the study, the best case scenario is 5 times the number of deaths attributed to each vaccination versus the attributable to COVID-19 in the most vulnerable 65 plus demographic. VAERS, using 8 different independent methods, attributes 150,000 deaths to COVID vaccines in the United States since January 2020. Kirsch has offered $1 million reward for anyone who finds an error in his calculations. Kirsch's study found that the vaccine kills more people than they save in every age range was consistent with Pfizer's 6-month clinical trial findings that people who took the vaccine were more likely to die than people who didn't take the vaccine. There were a total of 20 deaths in the people who took the vaccine versus 14 deaths in the people who didn't take the vaccine. He's offering $1 million. In yet another effort to calculate excess deaths from vaccinations, a non-VAERS database, Ohio-based attorney Thomas Rentz used the Medicare database Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services to calculate that there have been 48,465 deaths among Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries within 14 days of a first or second dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. There are about 59.4 million Americans covered by Medicare, representing only 18.1% of the population. So these staggering numbers are roughly comparable to Steve Kirsch's population-wide estimate of 150,000. According to Dr. Fauci, the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, the White House and mainstream media, we now have a pandemic of the unvaccinated, with 95 to 99% of COVID hospitalizations and deaths being attributed to the unvaccinated. As I mentioned above, these estimates are a product of systematic deception of the public and presumably of the president by America's top regulators. So how did the CDC go about fooling President Biden? I'll tell you how they fooled President Biden. He wasn't there. The dude was struggling with dementia. The dude was an absolute dumbass. That's how they fooled President Biden. One of the CDC's bold deceptions is to hide vaccine mortalities in U.S. data by counting all people as unvaccinated unless their death occurred more than 2 weeks after the second vaccine. That is crooked and criminal. After the second vaccine, ironically, CDC doubles down on the fraud by counting many of these vaccine deaths as COVID deaths. Disgusting. VAERS reported 800,000 injuries by 9.5 months between December 14, 2020 and October 2021, with 112,000 classified as serious. Pfizer either did not report severe injuries short of death or deceptively de-emphasized their severity during clinical trials, including neurological harm, blood clots, strokes, embolism, aneurysm, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré syndrome, multi-organ failure, amputation, blindness, paralysis, tinnitus, and menstrual harms. More than 30,000 women in the UK and 6,000 US have complained of the latter. Pfizer's clinical data predicted potentially fatal myocarditis in 1 in every 318 teens. According to an article in Current Trends in Cardiology, within 8 weeks of the public offering of COVID-19 products to the 12 to 15-year-old age group, we found 19 times the expected number of myocarditis cases in vaccination volunteers of background myocarditis rates of this age group. We owe it to our kids. We owe it to our kids to bring these people to justice. The age group of 12 to 14-year-old, we found 19 times the expected number of myocarditis cases. Israeli data and U.S. data presented to CDC Advisory Committee in June 23, 2021 similarly found the rate of reported cases of myocarditis in vaccinated teenage boys aged 12 to 17 is at least 25 times greater than expected and is 50 times greater than reported rate in vaccinated males over 65. These astonishing numbers mean myocarditis is far more a rare side effect, as Dr. Fauci and Pfizer like to claim, nor is it harmless. A recent study suggested that myocarditis is associated with a 50% mortality within 5 years. A teen had effectively zero risk of dying from COVID and substantial risk of dying from vaccination. It's sick. It's really sick. It's really sick. Our kids, here we go. Kirsch's model estimates that 600 children have already died from COVID vaccines as of September 2021. A recent Lancet study shows that a healthy child had zero risk of COVID, suggesting the most of these kids are dying unnecessarily. Some 86% of children suffered an adverse reaction to the Pfizer COVID vaccination in clinical trials, and 1 in 9 children suffered a serious reaction grave enough to leave them unable to perform daily activities. We owe it to our kids to bring these people to what they deserve. Well, I'm lit. My head's spinning because I'm so angry. I'm so angry because there's not more people angry from this data here. Here are the last 2 things that I will sum up. Dr. Fauci's official theology makes unvaccinated American national scapegoat, holding that they are more likely to spread disease and therefore should not be allowed to participate in civic life. The data across multiple sources and studies depict a very different reality. In July 2021, the CDC found that fully vaccinated individuals who contact the infectious have as high a viral load in their nasal passage as unvaccinated individuals who get infected. That means the vaccinated are just as infectious as the unvaccinated. CDC acknowledges that vaccinated individuals carry at least as many COVID germs in their nose as the unvaccinated. Moreover, the research record multiple transmissions between 2 fully vaccinated individuals, both wearing surgical masks and in one instance using full PPE, including an N95 mask, face shield, gown, and gloves. So again, tell me how good you vaccinated individuals feel now. Somebody reach out, somebody tell me in the comments. I'm live. And now I'm fired up. I was hoping that this was going to last about 30 minutes. You could send it to your friends. They could hear these astonishing facts from the Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr. Please go buy the book, read it, share it with your friends, buy it, send it to them. I will be back soon. I'll see you guys. Have a good one. That's episode 56 for you. Bye.